The story of Joash, the boy king, and the restoration of the temple. The story of Joash, the boy king of Judah, is a tale of God's providence and faithfulness, even in the darkest times. It begins during the reign of Queen Athaliah, a wicked woman who seized power after the death of her son, King Ahaziah. Athaliah was the daughter of the notorious Queen Jezebel, and like her mother, she led the people into idolatry and committed many acts of evil. When her son Ahaziah died, Athaliah ruthlessly eliminated all potential heirs to the throne, including members of her own family, in order to secure her rule. She believed she had destroyed the entire royal lineage of David, the family through whom God had promised the Messiah would come. But God's plans could not be thwarted. Unknown to Athaliah, one of Ahaziah's sons, a baby named Joash, had been rescued. Joash's aunt Yehosheba, the wife of the high priest Jehoiada, secretly took the infant and hid him in the temple of the Lord. For 6 years, Jehosheba and Jehoiada protected Joash, raising him in the temple and teaching him the ways of God. Meanwhile, Athaliah ruled over Judah, promoting the worship of Baal and leading the nation further into sin. When Joash turned 7 years old, Jehoiada the high priest decided that it was time to restore the rightful king to the throne. Jehoiada was a wise and godly leader who trusted in God's promises to the house of David. He gathered the commanders of the army, the Levites, and leaders from across Judah, and revealed Joash's identity to them. Together, they formed a plan to anoint Joash as king and overthrow Athaliah. On the appointed day, Jehoiada brought Joash out of hiding and presented him to the people in the temple. Joash was crowned king, and Jehoiada placed the royal crown on his head. He also gave Joash a copy of the covenant, symbolizing his commitment to rule under God's laws. The people rejoiced, blowing trumpets and shouting, "Long live the king!" Athaliah heard the commotion and rushed to the temple. When she saw Joash standing by the pillar, crowned and surrounded by the people, she tore her robes and cried out, "Treason! Treason!" But Jehoiada ordered the guards to remove her from the temple and execute her, bringing her reign of terror to an end. With Joash now on the throne, Jehoiada guided him in leading the nation back to God. Together they renewed the covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people, committing to serve and worship the one true God. They destroyed the temple of Baal, tore down its altars, and killed the priests of Baal, purging Judah of idolatry. Joash's reign began with great promise. Under Jehoiada's mentorship, Joash led efforts to restore the temple of the Lord, which had fallen into disrepair during Athaliah's reign. He called on the priests and Levites to collect funds from the people to repair the temple, and the people willingly gave generously. With these resources, skilled workers were hired to rebuild and restore the temple to its former glory. The restoration of the temple was not just a physical rebuilding but also a spiritual renewal for the nation. It symbolized the people's return to God and their desire to honor him. For many years, as long as Jehoiada was alive, Joash ruled wisely, and Judah experienced peace and prosperity. However, the story of Joash takes a tragic turn after the death of Jehoiada. Without the guidance of his godly mentor, Joash began to drift away from God. He surrounded himself with corrupt advisors who led him back into idolatry. The people followed suit, abandoning the temple of the Lord and worshipping idols once again. God sent prophets to warn Joash and the people, urging them to repent, but they refused to listen. One of these prophets was Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the very man who had saved Joash's life and placed him on the throne. Zechariah stood before the people and declared, "This is what God says. Why do you disobey the Lord's commands? You will not prosper. Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you." Instead of heeding Zechariah's warning, Joash ordered him to be stoned to death in the temple courtyard. This act of betrayal and murder marked a turning point in Joash's reign. God's judgment came swiftly. The army of Aram invaded Judah, defeated its forces, and plundered Jerusalem. Joash was severely wounded in the attack, and his own officials, angry over his betrayal of Jehoiada's family, conspired against him and assassinated him in his bed. The story of Joash is a sobering reminder of the importance of faithfulness to God throughout one's life. While Joash began his reign with great promise and led significant spiritual reforms, his failure to remain steadfast in his devotion to God led to his downfall. It highlights the danger of relying solely on others for spiritual guidance without cultivating a personal, enduring relationship with God. Joash's legacy also underscores God's faithfulness to his promises. Despite human failures, God preserved the line of David, ensuring the fulfillment of his covenant and paving the way for the coming of the Messiah. This story challenges us to remain committed to God, seek Him with all our hearts, and guard against turning away from Him, no matter what challenges or temptations we face.